So the Bulls officially drop their media day and training camp dates and details. Who are we most excited to hear from on Bulls Media Day a week from Monday? And what do we think Billy Donovan and his coaching staff should be focusing on in that week of training camp practices? Plus, one of the biggest Bulls doubters and naysayers of the national NBA media voted Josh Giddey's contract as one of the most underrated NBA offseason moves. We'll talk about that next. What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome into the CHGO Bulls Podcast. Coming to you live here on this Friday afternoon. I'm Peck, Bulls_Peck. That's Big Dave. Bow. BAWL Sports. And Will the Go Gottlieb. Perfectly coiffed. Look at the coif on screen. My goodness. Will_Gottlieb. And rocking the controls behind the scenes. Filling in for Katie today. It is our guy, Sean Anderson.
Wow.
I know he's so excited to hear us talk some Bulls, right?
Sure.
Happy Friday, everybody in Bulls Nation. Thanks for joining us. If you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like button now so you don't forget. And also, shout out and reminder, we are still running that fundraiser for the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, who do great work here in the community in Chicago and everywhere. If you're feeling generous today, toss them a few bucks. We're trying to win the competition across the ALLCITY network, just like we did the first time around. Gentlemen, we now know what the plan is for Media Day and training camp. Are we excited?
Yes. Basketball is almost here. It is near.
So
it is
close.
very, very close. We are right there. So I am tremendously excited about it, man. I love doing these off-season shows, as you talked about, Matt, the dog days and all those things. It's always fun. Those are the most fun shows we do. But I like when we get down, to the nitty-gritty and we start dissecting numbers and, talking about the players on the team and the matchups and all that, other cool nerd stuff that I really enjoy doing when we're talking basketball and talking to Will to Go Gottlieb and, just spending 30 minutes with him, getting his opinion on stuff and, talking about the draft, even though it's so long away, but still discussing it and having all that stuff. And then, talking with Matt and having debates with him while we're watching the game, all that stuff. I look forward to all of those things. And when it gets close to the end, like game 82, I'll be like, oh, man, we just did a bunch of stuff. Oh, man, I'm glad we don't have to do that no more. Then I immediately miss it, and I get very excited for it again and again and again. So keep it short. Yes, I'm very excited.
First of all, just incredible generosity from Kimberly here in the comments saying that she will match donations for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Kimberly,
Let's go.
You're the best. Thank you so much.
Kimberly,
we always really appreciate you. That is super fun.
You know what that means? Everybody else, y'all need to pool together and get up to that $500 mark.
Get busy.
For real. Get on it.
But I'm so with you, Dave. The off-season shows are fun. I love the draft, as everybody here knows. I love covering the draft. I love going to the combine. I love, interviewing the players. I love going to the lottery. I love the off-season. I love the trades. I love the drama. I love the free agents. I love all that stuff. But what I love more than that, basketball. I love watching basketball. I love watching NBA basketball. And I'm excited for that to come up. It's pretty crazy that it is 10 days away from Media Day. So, I'm not sitting here anticipating a championship run out of these guys, but it's such a privilege and just a complete blessing to be able to do this job. And I think that's always, there's no matter what your job is, it's work, and I think it's really important for us to just take a moment to appreciate how cool our work is. So it's hard. The nights are long. The winter is cold and dark and long. And sometimes I would rather be in somewhere that's warmer and hotter and sunnier. But it is pretty special to be able to do what we get to do. And so obviously basketball is a big part of that. It'll be really fun to dig back into it because I agree, Dave, like at the end of the day, going through all off-season stuff is fun, but like I want to watch basketball. I like watching basketball.
Yeah. Want to watch ball.
And we're so close. We're so close. The Bulls' first preseason game is October 7th. Media Day is Monday, September 29th. That is a week from this coming Monday. And then the Bulls have a whole week's worth of practices from that Tuesday through Sunday, then a day off, and then they start their preseason slate at the Cavs in Cleveland on that October 7th date. So we are getting very, very close, Bulls Nation. With Media Day, of course, being the official start to the season, the question that I'm always thinking about and wondering what Bulls fans' answers are is, who are you most excited to hear from in those Media Day interviews? And what, if anything, specifically are you hoping to hear, hoping to see? You know, there's a lot of returning faces and names this year. Kobe White, Josh Giddey, freshly signed. Billy Donovan, still this team's head coach. He's fresh off an extension, as is the front office. So, Dave, looking into this will be our fourth Media Day coverage as members of CHGO Bulls. What are you most interested in seeing or hearing? Who do you want to hear from the most?
Two people. One, Josh Giddey, as you mentioned, Matt. You know, freshly signed, newly minted. Shout out to him for the $100 million. Like that's, you know, as Goat always says, like that's a life-changing generational money. You know what I mean? Like, so I want to know where his head is at. Like he always, I shouldn't say always, because yet last year was the first year, but he had me really excited for him and what he was going to be with the Chicago Bulls. When Will Perdue and I was just sitting there listening to him and watching him speak, we kept looking at each other like, hey, man, like this dude, you know, and I looked at Will and I was like, this dude sounds insane. And that's a good thing. Like, like he sounds pretty crazy. And I like that. And I like my, you know, players, you know, have that basketball crazy in them. And he has that. So now that he's got the money, that's going to come with the pressure. And that's going to come with the expectations. So I want to know what's his plan to deal with that. What's he worked on in the offseason? Yeah, I just want to hear from him, you know, and his feelings about now, you know, basically being the man, you know, on the Chicago Bulls. And he is the guy, as I keep saying, the most important player on the offense. The other guy is Modest Buzelis, because he's always a great quote. He's always somebody you want to hear from and talk to. I want to know what he feels. I want to see what he's looking like too. You know, how much bigger he got, how much muscle he put on, what he's worked on in the offseason. Because he's been talking a lot, like he's spending a lot of time, you know, in the weight room, getting ready and getting prepared for this season. So I just want to hear what are his goals, you know, for this season for himself. Yeah, like that. Those two guys, I definitely, truly want to hear from, and I'll be excited to hear from them.
Yeah, I think as we talked about yesterday, those are kind of like two of the main guys on the team, like moving forward now. I mean, those are kind of the two cornerstone pieces. Like Noah, I think you could throw in there, but he's so much of a mystery box right now that we just don't really know what it's going to be. Kobe obviously is what's in the box. Kobe's obviously, you know, the guy for now, but we don't know how long for now will be. And hopefully it's, you know, many years to come, but like, we just don't know how it goes. And the business of basketball is a business. So I think those are probably the two right answers. But for me, it's always like, we get so few opportunities to talk to the front office. And so we'll hear from Arturas and Billy Donovan up there to kick things off on, it's a Monday, right? Monday the 29th.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, you know, typically like the way these go is like at the deadline, it's like reacting to the transactions or lack thereof. At the end of the season, it's reacting to the loss to the Miami Heat in the play-in, and like the they foresee in free agency and draft. After the draft, it's like, you know, reacting to the player that they selected and sort of what their plans are, as much as they can share, which oftentimes is not much, just given the nature of the business. But the media day piece is always interesting because it's really the first time we're sort of looking ahead to the season to come and sort of the bets that they're making as far as roster decisions, like paying Josh Giddey $100 million, that's a bet on Josh Giddey. Bringing Trey Jones back for 3 years is a bet on Trey Jones. So thinking about like how those things actually play out and their perspective on why they made those bets and then how they expect those bets to pay off, I think that's what's really interesting. And we have not really been able to get any sort of concrete, expectations, goals, projections about how good this team will be, wants to be, where they think they stack up. And I think we probably won't get the answer to that, but we're certainly going to ask. And so that's always something because that's how we hold them accountable, right? Like if you say, we just want to be better every day, which is why I hated yesterday when I said modest, my room for modest was growth, because how do you measure that? But if you want to say you get better every day, then how do I hold you accountable to that in terms of like, measuring success or lack thereof? And so this is it's always just an exciting time of year because I think every team has hope. Every team is like ready to go for the season, but you also have to hold that to the standard of like how good are we actually going to be. And so the players, I think, obviously, we'll talk to them all season. We'll talk to Billy all season, but it's always we get like 4 opportunities a year to talk to Arturas, and I'm always very curious to see how that goes.
Beef Dip in the chat saying definitely want to hear from Giddey about the new contract and his goals. Nine-hearted one saying Giddey's for real. He needs the support from the franchise. I'd say $100 million of guaranteed money is a pretty solid step towards feeling supported. I am also curious to hear from Josh just his perspective about that 2-month-long stalemate in their contract negotiations this summer, and then finally finding that middle ground. And I'm guessing that mostly it was just his agent and his representation handling that for him. But I'm sure that Josh still has a take himself on what that experience was like and the length of the contract and the dollar figures of the contract that they landed on. So I'm curious to hear that. Also, like, low-key kind of curious to see what not only Vooch, assuming he does take the podium, says, but the tone in which he says it. Because when Vooch did his exit interview at the end of another year where his team gets bounced in the play-in tournament and most of the other vets among his teammates have been traded away, and it's just Vooch and the young crowd now entering on an expiring deal, the vet who's always reliable, who always shows up, who's going to do his role this season, but maybe like last season is trying to play his way out of town on a playoff-bound team. Because his exit interview, he said, at this point in my career, I want to play for a winner. I want to play for a team that's got a chance to actually contend deep into the playoffs. And sorry to burst the bubble of any Bulls fans hoping for that this season. That ain't happening in a Bulls jersey this season. Bulls aren't making some crazy run through the playoffs like the Pacers did last year. The Bulls might not even make the playoffs. So I am curious what kind of attitude Vooch comes into media day with. And then obviously, as you were kind of alluding to as well, because we hear from them so infrequently, whether it's AK or it's Mark or it's both of them on the podium together, I'm dreading it while also very curiously looking forward to hearing from them again. As somebody who is not buying the plan that they are selling the fans right now, I want to hear from them. And I want to hear some concrete goals from them about what this season is about. Because you've made it perfectly clear you have no interest in going all the way rebuild tanking style. Fine. How else do you plan on this team being better and more competitive this year than they were last year? That's what I want to hear from them.
Well, and that's exactly what they avoided saying before, the offseason, which
right.
was like, we're not going to, set expectations. When you do that, then you start to make, decisions that are not well thought out, basically. And I think that's correct. But at the same point, like, I was reading, there was a preview of the Bulls season on CBS from James Herbert. He was saying like, the Bulls finished 40-42, 39-43, and 39-43 in the last 3 years. And like, then you're going to come out and say like, we don't want to put expectations on. Like, that's kind of a hell of a thing to say. And so like at a certain point you do have to, well, that's the question, right? And that's why I said this a couple of weeks ago, like at a certain point you do have to start trying to like go to push some chips towards the middle of the, you can't just fold every single hand you're playing at the poker table. So I don't know if that will be now. I think it would be irresponsible for Arcturus to get up there and say, like, we're going to make the playoffs this year, or we're going to be, a 6th seed or better. And that's the standard we're holding ourselves to. Like, I don't know that I would do that if I were him. But what I would do is internally know that, okay, we are going to go all in this year on trying to win. And if we can, then we're going to make a big move at the deadline or next summer, because that's how our books line up. And if we can't, we are going to have to start to strip this down a little bit and reorient things around, Giddey and Modest as opposed to Kobe and Io, right? And so I think those are some of the big decisions that you won't know on media day, but you will know by the end of the season. And to Dave's point that he keeps saying, like, this stuff is all going to become very apparent very quickly. Like, that's exactly what the point is. So I think whether or not there's like an explicit, we're going to win 45 games this year, or we're going to be the 6th seed or better, like, I think we know, because we've been talking about it. We've been following the paper trail of the cap sheet. We've been talking about, how these contracts will line up. There's a lot at stake this year.
With that, let's pause and knock out a couple of ads real quick. We come back on the other side. We'll talk about what we want to see Billy Donovan focusing on when it comes to their practices in training camp, which is right around the corner. X's and O's wise, what do we want Billy and his staff focusing on? We'll talk about that next after you hear from our friends and sponsors. While you're doing that, hit the like. Here's some ads. Today's show brought to you by Circa Sportsbook. Whatever the sport, the app to bet is Circa Sports Illinois. Circa Sports is sports betting the way it should be. Circa Sports has high betting limits, low holds, and exceptional customer service, featuring my favorite thing when it comes to customer service, real human beings to talk to. Ain't that a kick? Bet on all your favorite teams in every game this season. Spreads, props, futures, even in-game betting, Circa Sports has it for you. I am so glad the football betting is back. It's one of my favorite things about this time of year. Had a really strong week 2. Looking forward to a big week 3. Chicago, Dallas. I don't know if I'm betting on a Bears win, but I am definitely going to get some kind of action on that. Maybe taking the over. I think both of those defenses are going to be a stinky. And I'm making those bets on Circa. Spreads, props, futures, again, even in-game betting, Circa has it for you. So fun to bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime in Illinois. What are you waiting for? Download your new bookie today at circasports.com. Must be 21 and older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
It's time to call our people. 4 Seasons, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and electric. Doesn't matter if you got a plumbing emergency, electrical emergency, or if you need a hot water tank installed. Call 4 Seasons. Do it. Now is the time to schedule your 4 Seasons furnace tune-up, y'all. Get it right. Think you got that whole home generator? You want one of those? Call 4 Seasons. At 4 Seasons, they guarantee same-day installation for your heating, cooling, plumbing, electric, and generator needs with no extra charge for nights, weekends, and holidays. Celebrate. Furnaces start at $39 a month, and furnace AC combos start at $57 a month. Call today and save $50 from your trusted local experts. 4 Seasons, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and electric. They've been serving Chicagoland for over 50 years. Your trusted local experts are 4 Seasons, heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and electric. Make sure you visit 4seasonsheatingcooling.com for all their special offers and money-saving coupons, because for all the right reasons. Peck!
Call 866 4 Seasons. Friday afternoon shout out during those ads or right before them. We got some donations thrown in towards our Big Brothers Big Sisters cause. $5 from our guy Maddie Legend, $20 from Mr. Strick. Thank you guys. And again, our friend Kimberly reminded y'all, up to $500 she will match. That is great. You can start something incredible right now in your life by helping out the wonderful people at Big Brothers Big Sisters of America. CHGO is joining with them, and we're asking you to join us. Your donation directly funds the screening, training, and support needed to create life-changing friendships between a big and a little. So what are you waiting for? Throw a few bucks their way. Okay. Moving along with the training camp schedule, also now known, and they will be holding their training camp practices right there at the Advocate Center. No Nashville trip or anything like that this year. I'm curious what you guys would like to hear from Billy, and you and your fellow members of the Bulls beat will get a chance to hear from Billy and the players after a lot of these training camp practices that week. And so you'll get a chance to ask him, what are you guys focusing on? A year ago, with this more up-tempo offense, we all knew that was goal 1A. Billy wanted these guys to be well-conditioned. He wanted them to be the best conditioned team in the NBA, saying if we run, we'll have fun, and hopefully also with that fun, win. And the Bulls definitely, to their credit, totally transformed their offense that way last season. Dave, I'll start with you. What do you want Billy to be focusing on in addition to, hey, let's run, let's get out with these, fast-paced, open, and sort of creativity flowing offense that Josh Giddey is going to be at the helm of?
Dave, you are muted. I'm talking as Dave. Dave, you have to unmute yourself. I can't, unfortunately. So it says guests has muted themselves. You can't get mad at me. I can't do anything. Okay. Well, why don't Will?
Might do
Will
Will,
answer.
What about you?
Back in, and I can answer. Now I'm forgetting the question because I was distracted by a funny moment.
What
Just
other than
about-
the fast pace do you want Billy focusing on in
the
these
fast
training
pace.
camp practices? Yeah.
I mean, I think it actually needs to be, we played fast last year, but can we play faster this year? Like, I don't know what the right little rhyme is to get the team going the way they need to about running and having fun. But, like, I do think they need to play at an even faster pace. This is the one big question that I have about this team, maybe more than anything else, on the court in terms of, like, the actual basketball and not, like, the roster construction stuff, is – can this system where we saw success last year at the end of the year, and yes, it was a small sample size. Yes, that was a particular sample size at a certain point in the season when, you weren't getting every team's best. We've been through it all, but like, can that work? And in a league where it's a copycat league, teams see the Pacers and the Thunder having success, making it to the finals, having one of the hardest played NBA finals that we've seen in years. I mean, that was 7 games of, like, every game was tight. Every game was down to the wire. The effort, the intensity, just every single possession. It was really some incredible basketball to watch. And I think teams see that and they want to emulate some of that. And 82 games is a long season, but I think you are going to start to see teams playing a little faster, see teams running a little bit more on made shots and misses. And just playing with a little bit more of that same intensity that the Bulls played with and had success with. And to their credit, I think they were ahead of the curve. Now, will they still be ahead of the curve if the rest of the league is catching up to them? And so that's a big question I have is, like, are they still going to outpace teams if they play the same way they did? Like, if they just like feel content with, this is our offense, this is who we are, and now let's start to implement some defense, I think the rest of the league might catch up to them. I think they have to push it even faster and also improve their defense, which is a very tall task. But I think that's really what I'm looking forward to hearing from Billy, because he said it before, like, you have to really lean into the things that you're good at. You can't just, like, hedge in every direction and, try a little bit of a, half-court offense, a little bit of a, transition game. You can't have, like, some shooters and some non-shooters. Like, you really got to lean into it in order to excel. And I want to see if they're going to be able to take that pace up to another level on offense while also bringing along the defense, because we know there's some real areas of improvement there as well.
Well, Sean said y'all can hear me now, so
Hey, we got a
that's
Dave.
a good thing. Just to say, I didn't mute myself. It just did that. I don't know how it happened. It just honestly did that. But I agree with you, Will. Like, that was my other point, was the defense. Like, I think you definitely have to find that identity. AK has said it. And, he, AK, and Eversley, are kind of in lockstep with how they're doing this team. So they want to establish defensive identity. So Billy is going to have to come up with that scheme with the players that they have. I am very interested in seeing how he rotates the minutes for the bench unit and what those guys, who are going to be the guys that Billy, really likes, and who's going to be the guy that we don't know will get the minutes like that, but might get an uptick in those minutes because of how they're playing. I'm talking about guys like Julian, Dalen, and Patrick Williams. So I want to know if those guys, what Billy looks like in their eyes, I should say, what Billy looks like, and if he's comfortable, like, hey, you get out there, do your thing. Hey, you get out there, do your thing. We saw how he did it last year. He was kind of doling it out to Dalen and doling it out to Julian, and then we wouldn't see him for a while. And then in certain situations, he would put him in the second quarter, And sometimes just let them go. Like sometimes those guys would get, 15 minutes in the game, to showcase. And, maybe it was just the matchup that Billy liked and he enjoyed that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he establishes as far as the bench unit is concerned and that second unit, and who are going to be those guys that he is comfortable with. We have ideas as far as who it's going to be. I mean, you can put in there for sure. Trey Jones got the contract, so he's definitely going to be one of those guys that's going to play. Zach Collins and what he did, Isaac Okoro or Kevin Huerter, depending, we'll see how it goes. But who's going to be the first one off? Who's going to be the leader for that bench? And who among those three guys I mentioned earlier are going to get those minutes to showcase?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we find out who exactly is running and who Billy has running with that top unit when they're doing their 5-on-5s, and what is that second five, that bench unit comprised of, and does Billy do a little bit of mixing and matching with those two groups to just kind of like see how they can work not only on their offensive sets, but what they're doing defensively. And like, to me, you were talking about half court a minute ago, and as much as we know that Billy is going to challenge his guys to run even harder and play even faster offensively than they did last year, and that's all well and good, but if they're going to get me to buy in, they also need to prove that they can actually have some functioning half-court offensive sets, because you can't run 48 minutes, and you certainly, if this team ever gets there, succeed by doing only that and just that in a playoff game, in a best-of-7 playoff series. So, other than Kobe, who has shown at times to be able to create his own shot off the dribble, break defenses down one-on-one, and then either use that to get to the rim or kick out to an open guy if Kobe, the defense collapses on Kobe, and same thing with Josh. But like, as somebody who wants to see Modest take a big step forward this season, is Billy going to throw some half-court pick-and-roll sets where Modest is featured? Maybe it's pick-and-roll, Modest is setting the screen, maybe some inverted pick-and-roll. Like, what else can Billy do to get Modest involved in the offense other than, hey, Modest sees a window to make a cut off the ball, whether, backdoor, weak side, whatever it may be, wherever Modest is. We saw him make some strong, decisive cuts through the paint last season that led to some of those high-flying Modest dunks that we all love. What on top of that can Billy try to build into their half-court set, even if the focus is still on playing fast?
Yeah, and this is kind of where we were headed with our conversation yesterday, which is just to say that, like, I don't think it's going to be 25 pick and rolls for Modest this year again, right? I think that there's a reason why we saw Modest in what Billy Donovan III was calling a secondary playmaking role in Summer League. I think there's a real reason why they're putting him in that role. And it turned into kind of more of a primary role. Obviously, Yuki was great as the point guard, but they wanted to explore what he looks like in that position and in that role with the Bulls offense, because the Bulls Summer League team was playing the same way the Bulls are going to play, up and down pace, just really putting pressure on the rim. And so I think Modest will get a lot of opportunities there. I don't necessarily think it's going to be just like, all right, everybody stop what you're doing, get Modest the ball and run a pick and roll. But it's like, if he gets a rebound, he can push it up the floor and make a play. If he's attacking a closeout, he's able to read the defense, get into the paint, and finish or spray it out. And then, maybe we will see some opportunities for him to get into some pick and roll stuff. I think they absolutely need to do that. I just don't think you want to overload him too much with trying to force him to be sort of like the primary facilitator, because as we talked about yesterday, I just don't think his passing is quite there yet. So bringing him along slowly while still implementing more sort of drawn up ways for him to get into that stuff, I think is key. And I know that this was sort of a lead into a question about Modest, but I also wanted to put that on Josh Giddey as well. You definitely want to play in the half court, in transition, and avoid playing in half court if you can, because it's just easier. It's better. You're helping yourself get easier baskets when you're playing in transition. But inevitably, the game slows down. We talked about it last year. The Bulls were one of the best teams in transition. 15% of their total offense was in transition. That means 85% was in the half court. What do you do in that 85% of the time? And I think Giddey's going to need to continue to take strides there. I think he's going to have to develop an off-the-dribble three-point shot. I think he's going to have to continue driving with aggression and with authority and trying to get to the line and trying to finish. and even maybe like get into like a pull-up jump shot game, or like expand his floater and just improve on it. I know it's something he is comfortable with and trying to, turn down on the volume, but like maybe he just leans into that and like becomes sort of in the same way that Trae Young really uses his floater as a weapon. Like can Giddey turn that into something that's really efficient? So I don't know exactly how it'll look, but like if you're the guy getting 100 million and you're the guy with 25-30% usage, like you got to be able to score in the half court. So I think that's a big thing for Modest. I think it's a big thing for Kobe, and I think it's a big thing for Giddey.
We got to knock out our second ad break right there. When we come back on the other side, we are going to dive into a piece written by The Athletic's John Hollinger, who has had a reputation in the last several years of not being too keen on what the Bulls' plan is and what they're doing in the NBA. But he had very glowing remarks and grades for the Josh Giddey contract, calling it one of the most underrated moves of the offseason. We will dive into that on the other side. Hit the like button and donate to Big Brothers Big Sisters while you listen to these words from our sponsors.
Ads. Big shout out to my man Ray on a Friday. It's Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake, and they're slashing prices all dang day on new cars and giving you big savings all month long. All month. Come in today and shop the model year-end sales event and drive home with employee pricing on every new Chevrolet model. You can get $3,000 to $11,000 off MSRP, or check out their selection of over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. With one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories, you're sure to find the perfect vehicle for yourself. And as one of the top-selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, they're able to keep their prices competitive, so you know you're going to get a great deal. Plus, that raised price promise lets you shop confidently because the price you see is the price you're going to pay. And don't miss out on the model year-end sales event going on all month long. For employee pricing on every new Chevy model, shop Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or at raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's try.
Today's show is also brought to you by EyeOnTheBall.net. All right, athletes, here's a question. Are you serious about leveling up your game? Because the right coach can change everything. And now, finding one is easy with Eye on the Ball. It doesn't matter if you're a kid just starting out or competing at the top level. You can sign up totally free at EyeOnTheBall.net. Create your profile, search through coaches in your sport, and connect directly with the one that is right for you and in your area. From soccer to swimming, baseball to basketball, you name it, the coaches are there. So what are you waiting for? Your future coach could be just one click away. Jump on today at EyeOnTheBall.net. That's IEYE ontheball.net. Find your coach and take your game to the next level. And we're back. CHGO Bulls roll along Friday afternoon. Shout out to Rob Antall, who threw $5 towards that Big Brothers Big Sisters fundraising. Also, another $50 from Anonymous. We respect your privacy, Anonymous, and we appreciate the donation. And reminder, our friend Kimberly in that chat said she'll match up to $500 during our CHGO Bulls show today. So throw a few bucks in there. We can see we can get that match up even higher for a good cause. All right, next thing on the agenda.
What a cool group of people we have. Like,
truly.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah,
we got to see our friend Kimberly at Bulls Fest just a couple weeks ago. It was great to see her.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll see all of y'all real soon, maybe for a watch party before we do a takeover or two in this upcoming Bulls season. All right, guys, so this came from John Hollinger of The Athletic. He has been a big Bulls skeptic when you're talking about national writers, NBA talking heads, that crowd. He was getting dragged in the first half of the 21-22 season because he very proudly said, I'm not buying this whole DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine plan. And the Bulls were proudly marching their way to, number one seed in the East at the All-Star break. And many, myself included, were saying, John Hollinger, what do you think about this? And then we all know what happened in the ensuing months and years. But so John Hollinger wrote this column calling out his biggest underrated moves of the offseason. And thank you, Sean. Here is a highlight from that write-up. This deal doesn't require Josh Giddey to be a superstar or even close to one. If he tops out as something like sixth man on a good team or decent team's third best player, this contract is still a win. The most significant criticism I can offer is not the contract itself, but the fact that Giddey's peculiar weaknesses do somewhat constrain team-building options if Chicago aspires to someday finish above 9th place. End quote. Also, shout out to Sean. Zach Giddey's new contract. Maybe Zach Levine is still in his month's brain. But look, I like how Hollinger even managed to get in a couple of digs at the Bulls and still not fully buying what their plan is. But I think he's right, and I feel the same as a Giddey skeptic. Like, it's not the years and the dollars that I was concerned about. It's like continuing to double down on your investment in Josh Giddey after acquiring him in a trade and making him, warts and all, so to speak, one of the biggest parts of your team's plan to be competitive moving forward. So what did you make of the way that Hollinger broke this down?
I'm really glad we're talking about this because I feel like, almost inadvertently, we've come off as maybe a little bit more negative on Giddey than, at least speaking for myself, than I actually am. Like, I think there's a difference between the quality of the player and the salary cap, market environment that he was in, and thinking about this through the lens of what is the best deal that the Bulls can get for themselves so that they can continue to build a good team. And I've also always said, like, Giddey played so well down the stretch that I do think that he earned a chance to get more opportunity, more runway with that. And we'll see what happens. So, I have a lot of respect for Hollinger. Like, he's one of the best in the business at what he does, but he's also been like a lead executive with the Memphis Grizzlies. So he knows what he's talking about. He's got, all the models and, to steal a term from Zach Lowe, like Vorps and Schnorps to like measure and evaluate these guys. And I do think that, Giddey is a good player. Is he a great player yet? I'm not sure. Can he be? I'm not sure. But like, he is a good young player, and he's shown moments of being really productive. Yes, but also those stretches where he was productive, helping the team win games. And that's really what it's about. Like, you can say, he's not a top 5 player, not a top 10 player, whatever, and that's true. But like, he was playing really well and the team was winning. And I do think that the Bulls owe it to themselves to follow up with that. And so I'm glad we're talking about this. Like, I'm not a Josh Giddey hater by any means. I actually, like, on a personal level, I really enjoyed covering him. Like, his self-awareness and just like understanding of what he needs to be as a person and how to, improve on things in his game is like really impressive to me. And so I'm hopeful that he can build on that. But at the end of the day, like, this is a business, and our responsibility as people who cover this team is to talk about it with regards to the Bulls and how they make their team better. And so I also think that, those two things are true. You can talk about him and the questions you have about him and the, pros to his game, but also acknowledge that there are questions, and that independent of all of that, there's a market dynamic here that the Bulls can use to their advantage. So I'm glad that this article came out, because I think this contract does have upside on it. Is it as much upside as they possibly could have gotten? No. But I don't think this is anywhere close to, and I felt, frankly, it's kind of similar about the deal that Patrick got last summer, where it was like, it's a flat deal, it's $18 million, that's going to be mid-level exception money. Even if he's just like a role player, I think that will grow into a good contract. Like, we know Giddey's going to at least be really productive. We don't know if it's always going to lead to wins. We don't know if it's going to lead to wins at the highest level, but like, we do know he's going to be productive. And I think even in just some of my own conversations with people around the league over the last week or so, it seems like the league is maybe a little bit higher on this deal than we initially were. So I think there's room for him to get better. And if he does, then you're looking at a value contract. But more importantly, I think maybe I am sort of underappreciating or undervaluing the idea of, or the importance of, a player that can help raise the floor of your group. And that is something that I have usually diminished, because I think you don't want to have a medium floor, right? Like, you want to have a high ceiling and a high floor, or the lowest floor possible, so you can get a good draft pick. And I think that the league has, in the last 10 years, operated that way. It seems like there is starting to be a little bit of a changing of that paradigm, because the lottery odds have flattened so much, and it's just harder to guarantee that if you are a bottom 14, you're going to get a bottom 4 pick. And so I don't know. I think all this to say, Giddey, he's a good player. I think he can improve. I don't think this is like a slam dunk deal where it's like, he's going to be the best value contract in the league. But I also think that's okay because if he is just like as good as he has been or better, I think it'll be good value, and that opens up a lot of opportunity for the Bulls to build around him. So that's the other piece for me here is just like you have the Giddey problem or the Giddey question, and then you also have the building around him question. And look, I mean, we've talked about it with the Magic, where it's like they have two max players, a $40 million player and a $30 million player in Franz Paolo, obviously Bane, and now Jalen Suggs. Like these guys can fit into a contract structure. It's really about how do you put the right pieces around them. And if Giddey does turn into the lead guy, whether he's like A1 in the league or not, I think they're going to have enough money to where they can build around him if they do it right. And so that's again, we talked about the bet that the front office is making. Like that's a bet on the front office to be able to put that team around him. So I'm curious to see how it goes. But I also think that worst case scenario, he's a productive player that's maybe a little bit overpaid, and best case scenario, he's really good value contract because he's really taken steps forward. So I get that there's going to be sort of criticisms about Giddey. I get that there are people that just don't like his game or that wouldn't want to be in the Josh Giddey business in the sense that they don't want a high floor player. But I do think that the rest of the league is sort of softening their stance on that. And that could be used to their advantage, right? Where the Bulls maybe do have a tradable contract in Josh Giddey if they decide to do it because teams are more open to spending money on that kind of player.
Yeah, that's well said, Goat. That's well said. Hopefully y'all can hear me while I'm talking. I was just on the Setting the Pace podcast with Alex Gordon. Shout out to him. And we were talking about this because his question was, why do people feel like they're so down on this contract? Why does it feel like people are down on this deal? Because it feels like a pretty good deal. And I just keep saying the same. I've been saying I thought it was a good contract. I thought it was a good deal. They met exactly where I thought that they were going to meet when we talked about this months ago. And I said he wants 30, or will the Bulls be 20? Well, they'll meet in the middle. That's exactly where they'll meet, and this is what will happen.
Dave, I think we lost you. I don't know if Matt can.
Yeah,
No.
I don't know what happened. It doesn't even say you
We
muted.
lost Dave's audio again. It's back.
About that?
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but hopefully I'm gonna keep it short then because I don't want to keep cutting out on you.
Keep it short.
I'm gonna keep it GOAT, but I do think Giddey is worth the money that he's gotten. I mean, a workman is worth his hire. What you pay him, like that's just what it is. Of course, he's gonna get his money, and he should. I have no problem with the contract that he got. I was proud of the Bulls for holding out like they held out. I thought that was the right move. I continue to applaud them for that because I think it was the right move to do, was to hold out because you had the leverage. I wanted to see the Bulls actually use the leverage. When they came up to 25, I kept saying that the reason they came up is because they really wanted Giddey. Out of everybody that was left in restricted free agency, he was the one that was really wanted. And I saw Hollinger talk about that too. He was the one that was truly, truly wanted. Like Kuminga is it feels like it's out of spite. and Cam Thomas, we don't know how long he'll be there, like that. But the Bulls truly wanted Giddey. They wanted to show him that, they liked him and they wanted him to run their offense. So they came up off it a little bit, which is fine. Nobody hates this contract. I don't think anybody hates this contract or deal. I'm ready to watch him play next season and then just not talk about this anymore. Just focus on what he does on the floor because that's where it will be for me because I think he'll have a good season. I'm interested. My bad. There it is. I'm interested to see how he affects everything on the floor and how it works for Josh Giddey. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this season. Congratulations to him getting his money. It was the very first thing I said when we did the emergency pod was congratulations, man, for getting this contract. And the Bulls are happy with it. He's happy with it. There it is. Like they met in the middle.
Connor in the chat saying, I think the floor for Giddey is much higher, even if he doesn't necessarily fit the long-term vision of this roster. It's a very tradable deal, and he's got potential that's still uncapped. Would you agree with the notion that this 4-year, 100 deal that the Bulls and Josh Giddey agreed to will be a very tradable contract through the duration of said contract? And I mean, I think Alberto in the chat just asked, like, if the Bulls decide they want to flip Giddey, can they flip Giddey, and what could they get for him? Is that more valuable than Alex Caruso when they traded him for Giddey? I'm not sure about that, but to me, if you trade for this guy and then sign him to a 4-year deal, like, AK can't decide halfway through this season, I actually don't want to build with and or around Josh Giddey, because I'm like, truly, there is a very high bar for how badly you need to mess up as the lead executive of basketball for the Chicago Bulls to get fired or to even be on a hot seat. We all know this, but if you make a trade for that guy and then decide you actually don't want him half a year into the first year of his contract, like, they can't survive that. So I think AK will be fully committing to this. But, you were talking a minute ago about the figures for Giddey being very affordable, and that, like, in 26 and especially 27, the Bulls' books look to be so clean that they can find, other talent to put next to Giddey that could end up earning significantly more than Giddey on a max level contract or something close to it. How do you see that plan, those steps of that plan unfolding in the best possible way for the Bulls to be more competitive, adding talent to this Giddey deal that's affordable, while of course still staying under that dreaded luxury tax line? Like, how does that plan come to fruition?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of pieces with that. Number one is just like his value and like whether we think that can be tradable, and that's kind of the point that I'm making, is that when we were talking about this, I felt like you needed to get him on a deal that was so I don't know, small is the right word, but a number that was palatable enough to where if he is a sixth man, he is paid appropriately as a sixth man. And so I don't really know that they got him at that level. Like, I think that's probably more than what they ended up paying him. But that's fine. I do think that, like, I guess I don't know, but like, to me, the thing is, I kind of agree with you, Matt, that like they're not going to trade him right away. And so whether he is overpaid or underpaid, they're building around, right? If he outplays this contract, they're going to keep him because he's a good player on a value deal. If he's underperforming this contract, they're not going to be able to trade him because he's underperforming and he's making $25 million. So I do think in some ways, like, it almost didn't really matter what they gave him as long as it was a small enough number where they could still build around him. And to that point, I mean, this is why I've been so adamant about this trade deadline or next offseason being the time to do it. Because if you look at the way that the Magic built, if you look at the way that the Pacers built their team, it was like, draft Franz and Paolo, right? Get them on the rookie scale deals, draft Suggs, and then go out and make the big trade as you have to pay those guys. That's the way that it works, is like you have to bring in the big contracts before you have to pay the internal guys, because that's like the order of operations with cap space. And so the Bulls can, like, theoretically, retain Kobe and Io and then sign everybody else to 1-year deals and then get back into the marketplace the following summer in 2027 when Giannis and Jokic will be free agents. I don't think that they'll have max space at that point. And it kind of just depends on how much the cap goes up. We don't really know that yet. But yeah, I just think like they are kind of locking themselves in here. I don't think there's going to be a situation like Zach where you sign him and then just try to start moving him immediately. And I do think that they're in a position to be able to build around him. But the issue is that they just need to like do it probably sooner than they would want. So it goes back to the initial conversation about media day, where it's like, yeah, you might not want to set expectations, but the way that your cap sheet is laid out, you might have to get these evaluations done here more quickly than you'd like, because this is the time to make decisions. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to about Giddey and why it's so important that they get off to a hot start to start the year. Because I think, like, to your point, Dave, like you've been saying, they're going to find this out from day one. It's not like he's either going to be good or bad from day one, but it's like we're going to see whether there is consistency starting on day one. And that's the big question is like, it's not you had a great second half of the year. It's you played well all season or you didn't. And that is the big fundamental question is like, can you do this over 82? And more importantly, can you do this over the next 16 to get to, a championship caliber team? And so I think so much of it will just depend on how they look as the season progresses and can they do that consistently. But I don't even know how important talking about Giddey's contract as tradable or not is at this point, because it just doesn't seem like he's either, great and underpaid and they keep him, or he's not and they can't move him because nobody wants to take on $25 million and they're going to have to build around him anyway.
When will that $25 million start to look astronomical? Like, is there a certain year will that start to look crazy?
In terms of like that number for him or that number in general?
Yes.
Because,
no, that number in general.
I didn't think 18 would ever look astronomical. And it does for Patrick. And so it really just depends. Like none of these numbers are without context, right? Like, $40 million is astronomical, but like for Desmond Bane, it made sense for the Magic, right? Because that was the missing piece to their operation. 18 million, it's going to be by the end of it less than the mid-level exception. Like I didn't ever think that was going to be a real problem because I felt like worst case scenario, Patrick has given you 10, 12 points a game, good defense, and 40% on threes. And so that's just like going to be a fine contract. It may not be a great contract, but it's always going to be fine. And that turned out to not be the case. So I think there's always context with it. And ultimately, it does really come down to how well the guy plays and how much promise he shows going forward. I think that's a big piece too.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge piece, man. And I just can't continue to say enough how excited I am for this season to start, bro. Like for stuff like this, like Josh Giddey has a lot on the line, and I'm glad you said that, Go. Like they might not want to set these expectations for him, but homie, they set. Like you better believe there will be expectations on Josh Giddey from the fans who love him, and for the fans who maybe don't want to see him do well, or guys like me and Matt who are just like, okay, let's see what it is. Like throw the ball out there, let's see what this is. Whether good or bad, or indifferent, let's see what you can do when you get out there on that floor. So yeah, I'm waiting on that contract to be signed so we can get to that. And I hope wherever they sign it, it is a court across the street because it is time to get to work right after that, man. And I'm excited to watch.
Rob in the chat saying Giddey's job is to make guys' jobs easier. He clearly helped elevate this offense in certain categories. I'm assuming referring to last year and the strong stretch that they finished with. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Josh Giddey did help his Bulls teammates in certain ways sort of, flourish or thrive offensively in that post All-Star break run. But, and again, and Dave, I'm curious what you think, because, I mentioned earlier, and one of them was in that quote graphic that Sean put up, Hollinger, even while like praising this Giddey contract as an underrated move made by any of all 30 NBA teams this offseason, got his jabs in and still sounds like someone who is a skeptic when it comes to building a winner with Josh Giddey as a main piece of it. He made that crack about, this might get tricky if the Bulls ever aspire to finish higher than the 9th seed in the East. So is this contract really some great underrated move if that's what you see? He had another one earlier in this same article saying, while Giddey has some apparent weaknesses that become particularly magnified at the highest playoff levels, parentheses, not that the Bulls need to worry about that, he's also just 22 years old and coming off his best season as a pro. So again, it's like, wow, this could be a great value. 4 years, 125 average annual value for Josh Giddey. If he continues to improve, still just 22 years old, this could be a great value contract. The Bulls still aren't going to win anything, which makes me curious as to why Hollinger would even bother to pinpoint this contract as one of the most underrated moves across the entire league this offseason. If he still sees Josh Giddey and the flaws attached to that player as it's going to make team building a real contender as with him as one of your main pieces difficult, not impossible, but real tricky. And, well, we don't need to worry about X, Y, and Z factors because, The Bulls aren't going to get to a really grueling best-of-7 playoff series. So what does it matter if Josh Giddey and his flaws have been exposed at that level already? Like, why?
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, but I think those are. Go ahead.
No, it's on you. Go quaff it out.
I was just gonna say then, like, I think those are like two different things a little bit. Like, they're obviously connected and they are part of the same question. But like having a good player and a good contract is never a bad thing, and you can like kind of figure out the rest later. Like you always want to accumulate talent and accumulate value however you can, and that's why like the lower the number the better, because yeah, it would have been more tradable. So, you know, it's a good thing to have a good player on a good contract. One team at the end of the year wins a championship. You can't just like operate in this world of like, if it's not perfect, we can't do anything. And I think that's how a lot of teams view the idea of tanking in the first place, is like letting sort of good be the enemy of great, or whatever the, you know, slogan is or tagline is or whatever. You do have to start building at some point. And that's kind of, again, my point about like this trade deadline in this offseason. It's like, okay, you got some like foundational pieces, you got some good young players, you've got like a couple of guys that you feel like you can move forward with. Like, is this go time or not? And if not, then you got to make some decisions. And that's why like I've given them a little bit more patience this offseason. But like if it gets to, you know, this time next year and it's the same roster and it was the same result, like now you have to like really start raising some serious questions about like what is the goal here? What are we doing here? You know, like why is this the same thing over and over again? But I do think that this is going to be a year of evaluation where you have to figure out how good these guys are, and then you make decisions from there. But like, if you don't have any good players on any good contracts, then you have no decisions to make, right? Like then you're starting from scratch. And I think it's better to just like have guys that you can either keep and build with or move. But like I said, I mean, you can't trade a contract you don't have.
Yeah, their decision was made on Josh Giddey the second they traded for him for Alex Caruso. So they know that they want him on this team and they want him to be one of their guys. I think when Hollinger like kind of says those things, I don't disagree with him, and the digs just made me laugh with him saying that. They're not doing anything, they're not going anywhere, but you know, hey, great deal. I mean, what else are they supposed to do though? Like, you've got to start somewhere, and they're not.
David, left again.
I'm back. I'm back. I'm not starting in the place where we wanted them to. I'm speaking for Matt and myself. They're not starting in that place, but this is where they are, and this is where they wanted to be. So they have everything that they wanted to do and wanted to be right here in front of them, and they're going to evaluate. Like you said, Goat, it will definitely be evaluation. They want to evaluate and still, you know, see if they can win something, which is interesting, but we'll see how it goes. But this is what they wanted, man. They set it up how they wanted, and now it's just about rolling the ball out there and see what happens.
Quick shout out. We got a few more anonymous donations to our Big Brothers Big Sisters fundraiser while we were chatting. Giddey, few different anonymous ones trickling in, and then our pal Kimberly, I saw, just threw in $200 to not only match but double the fact that the rest of our donators over the past hour eclipsed that $100 mark. Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, everybody else who donated. Really appreciate y'all for putting some dollars towards a good cause. So, like, yes, I see your point, Goat, about the whole, like, well, you can't only build while making perfect steps and no missteps, or you can't, you know, shy away from making a bold move and investing in a player or a plan just because you feared that there might be some obstacles that prevent that plan from working. At the same time, I, as a Bulls fan, after watching AK operate, am fearful that if the Giddey, Kobe, modest, young players with experience core plan doesn't pan out, and we don't see the floor of this team rising, while also hopefully sealing the ceiling rise of actually going to the playoffs, putting up a good fight in a series, maybe advancing to the second round. If we don't see those steps over the course of this Josh Giddey contract, because of his track record, I fear that AK will be frozen in fear of making an altering or adjusting move to the roster just because he's fearful of trying something else. We saw that for 3 years with the DeMar Zach Vooch plan. It didn't really work, and he sat there. My guess is out of fear of taking something that was not quite working and making it worse. Because guess what? They've still been to the play-in tournament, and they clearly have shown they have no interest in bottoming out. So if the yield isn't great in the first couple of seasons of this Josh deal, my fear is that AK will just stick on that path stubbornly, as we have seen him do before.
But yeah, again, I agree with you. Like, I'm not sitting here defending the direction of the team, but I think those are two different things. Like, you have to look at those two as separate, but also, and then like together. And I think you're looking at them together, which is like a big part of it. I'm not trying to, say that that's wrong, but like, that is a front office problem. That is not a Josh Giddey problem. And I think like getting, and frankly, like that has been sort of a trend of this front office, is like all these moves are like defensible to a certain extent, right? Like they've given out like deals that looked fine at the time, but for one reason or another, they haven't worked out. Like, I was never a big fan of the Jalen Smith deal because I thought Goga Bitadze would have been a better option. But like nobody was like up in arms about $21 million for a backup center. But like it turned out that he's not really in the rotation now that they've gotten Zach Collins. Now that could change, who knows? But like that wasn't a bad move in isolation. It just happened to not work out. I think again that's been a trend of a lot of these. So you can look at it that way and say, this deal of Josh Giddey in isolation is a fine deal. And that's kind of my point with this whole rant. But also acknowledge what you're saying, which is that the direction of the team is still, a big question mark. The ability and quality and, just like general ambition of the front office is still a big question mark. Those are separate things. Certainly the front office like impacts the isolated deal. But I'm trying to think about this particular conversation in regards to how Giddey is. Like, you're never going to get me to sit here and say that I think this is like the Bulls now making strides towards championship contention and that this absolves all previous mistakes. Like, that's not what I'm saying here at all. But I did feel like it was important that we think about this in isolation because we have been talking about it in regards to the bigger picture for basically this whole time, which again is a fair way to look at it. But I just don't think it's the entire way to look at it.
That's fair. Totally. And again, 4 years, 100. Dave, you said that's the middle we all thought they were going to meet at, and they did. Again, I am fine with this. I have no problem with this Josh Giddey contract. It's and I hope, my hope is that Josh Giddey and his teammates, as you say, Dave, roll the ball out there game one, prove me and plenty of other skeptics wrong about just how good this core of players can be together. Would love to see that and be proven wrong, despite how much I love being right. My view is, like, again, see y'all in the play-in tournament. Get your tickets now. Single season or single game tickets are available. Bulls.com. All right, we are out of here for today and for the week. Thank you, everybody, who tuned in today and to any episodes throughout the week. Also, check out our mini pod that we dropped earlier this week talking about Kuminga, who his agent just went on the Hoop Collective, Brian Windhorst podcast.
Oh my God, I forgot to bring that up. That was insane.
Craziness.
I can't believe I didn't bring that up. I wanted to talk about that.
Craziness. Well, we can loop back to that on Monday. We'll be back Monday with our final week of off-season episodes, guys. We've made it. We're about to be in the final week of the off-season. Shout out to our guy Sean Anderson for rocking the controls behind the scenes, filling in for Katie today. He's great. You should all watch and listen to see his show, White Sox. Of course you should. Yes. Read GOAT stuff, allchgo.com. Follow him, Will_Gottlieb. Become a diehard so you can read all of his great Bulls writing and reporting. Big Dave is a bow, BWL Sports. I'm Bulls_Peck. We are CHGO_Bulls. Thank you again to Kimberly and everybody else in the chat today who threw some of their hard-earned dollars towards a good cause with our partners at Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Appreciate every single one of you for making those donations. Have a great weekend, Bulls Nation. Bear down to those of you who also represent. And we will talk to you on Monday. See Red be good.
Can I say one thing?
We all see
You
how
cannot.
man.